All right, so thanks everyone for coming to this OpenBazaar developer update. These are recorded for posterity's sake and uploaded to the OpenBazaar YouTube channel so that people can check in later to see what's going on. If you have any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat, or if you have a mic on, just jump in to ask. All right, so I'll jump right into it. The main thing that we have been working on over the past month is the work for the multi-wallet feature that's going to be released in the next major release 2.3.0. As anyone who uses OpenBazaar knows right now, you are forced to choose a particular coin when you use OpenBazaar, either Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, or Zcash at the moment. And with this new feature, you will be able to operate an OpenBazaar node and use multiple coins at the same time. And the goal as of right now is that at the 2.3 launch, we will be supporting, if all of the infrastructure around inside servers, I'll talk about in a little bit, is working correctly, we'll be supporting Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Zcash. I believe that's the correct list. If I'm wrong, anyone else, feel free to jump in. So a lot of the work over the past month has been towards getting that working correctly, and the status of that is on the server side. Things are mostly done with primarily a lot of bug fixing happening. And on the desktop side, it's almost getting into the testing stage. There's still a few things here and there, but it's very close to being done. Now, in order for, if anyone on the OB1 team would like to go more in depth on the multi-wallet on the server side or on the client side, speak up. Otherwise, I'll move into the infrastructure stuff.
One note on the inside servers, there's various levels of confidence in different coins being available at launch. So while we're hoping to launch with the four you mentioned, I should say that Zcash is probably the most in question right now, with the highest confidence being Bitcoin, then probably Litecoin, then Bitcoin Cash.
Okay, I think I mentioned 5 though. Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, and Zcash.
Right, Ethereum is, we're still not sure if that's coming in the 2.3 release or immediately afterwards.
Okay, so that's good. That's good to clarify. Yeah, that Ethereum is kind of a bit different than the others, but
yeah, it uses different servers. It has a very different interface, so we may delay that until after the more kind of Bitcoin family ones are released.
Right. So those are the 5 coins that that we aspire to having in the OpenBazaar coin at some point. At launch is the goal, and if the infrastructure behind them is not yet available at the time, then there'll be some delay before they're in.
Right. We should also mention that along with Ethereum, we're working on ERC20 tokens, which isn't exactly the same as Ethereum.
Yes, that is a good point. Yep, ERC20 support is something that's being worked on as well, which would obviously open it up to a whole bunch, a plethora of different tokens. So I don't have a specific update on how far along that effort is. I don't think the goal is to have that at 2.3. Am I correct in saying that? I think it's meant to be after.
Like everything, it kind of depends.
Yeah, okay.
If it integration goes very smoothly and there's just absolutely no problems, then it's possible. But my expectation is it would not be in 2.3.
Yeah. And while it's a neat feature, it's not nearly as high priority as the other coins we talked about. So, Okay, good deal. Anything else on the multi-wallet side other than the infrastructure needs? Sounds like no. So A big part of the effort here to switch over to the multi-wallet for 2.3 is the fact that now the default way that the OpenBazaar wallet is going to work is by using APIs to communicate with servers. And we've decided to build for Insight compatible servers. And that means that we have to have reliable Insight servers for all of these different coins. And what we have found through the past several months of testing, we actually built our own sort of testing tool in order to see how reliable these Insight servers are. And we found that, unfortunately, most of the public servers are not particularly reliable. So that has, to make sure that we're delivering a good user experience, that has really forced us to put our own up, stand up our own servers, which we are now in the process of doing. Our infrastructure team has been spinning up some of these servers and testing them to make sure they work correctly. I don't know the most recent status of which coins are up or not, but I know there are a few that are up. I know at least Bitcoin and I think Litecoin have been stood up. And Bitcoin Cash, we've had some issues with, and I believe Zcash we haven't even started yet. But that's an ongoing thing. We have two people on our infrastructure team at OB1 now who are really focusing on this hard. So that's a important thing that has been taking a lot of time recently. Anything else on the infrastructure side worth mentioning? Oh, one note I have is that that needs to be done for mainnet, which is primarily what is focused on now, so that we can do proper testing. But also, the goal is to do that for testnet as well. So there's going to be both mainnet and testnet Insight servers, so that we don't have to spend real crypto to do testing, which is the point of testnet. But we don't have to spend real crypto. But
Mike, this is Mike
testing, which is the point of testnet. Sorry, we got an echo there.
Yes.
I think, Mike, you were trying to jump in?
Sorry to interrupt. Mike, this is Mike. But I just wanted to say that the challenges with the infrastructure has been primarily around Zcash and Bitcoin Cash. And our confidence in being able to release with 2.3 is related to how well we're able to rely on this infrastructure that we put.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that. Josh has also clarified in the chat that Ethereum uses Infura, not Insight. So just a point of clarification there. I noticed, Cornylove had unmuted, but he had dropped off the call. So I don't know if he wanted to jump in there or is having technical issues. All right, so other than that's worth mentioning on the infrastructure. There's also the mobile work that has been continuing, and it's been, I believe it's fairly far along at this point, and the main sort of blocker or thing that's preventing it from getting into the testing phase now is some of the multi-wallet work. So it's at the point where they're attempting to get the multi-wallet stuff in as soon as it's being completed and whatnot in the on the server side. So I believe that they're fairly far along. They need the reliable Insight servers that everyone else needs too, which is why that's being focused on. And I don't have much else to say on the mobile side. Anyone from OB1 have an update there, other than what I've just said?
Sam, this is Mike. I've had a little bit of time to spend with the mobile client, and it looks quite nice, actually. There are some areas that are still remaining feature-wise to complete. However, we're getting to the point that we're doing network connection improvements and trying to get performance on the app to get better. It's not so much poking at the features and whatnot. There are a couple of major features that are still not quite complete, but it's looking very promising from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, agreed. I've been doing some testing of it myself, and I can't wait until we are able to share it with the community for testing, because it really does look very slick, and it's not finished yet, but it's working pretty well, so it's exciting. All right, the next area is the web buying. So we've talked in the past about expanding OpenBazaar to more platforms, and the mobile app, of course, is a huge part of that effort. But we also have been focusing on getting OpenBazaar working on the web. And our initial approach was a read-only OpenBazaar.com, which is of course live now. Lets you look into the network, but you can't do anything in the network other than look at things. And the next step is a buy-only website where you could go and purchase things. It's not the full OpenBazaar experience yet, but it's a step toward it, and it really lowers the barriers of entry into the network, especially for buyers. So to get to that point, we have been building a bunch of different small proof of concepts to show that it's possible to do these sorts of things in the web browser. And we built a whole bunch of different ones to basically prove every separate component is possible. And the last one that was finished was relaying chat messages from the browser into the OpenBazaar network and back. And we got that was working roughly. It is proof of concept, and that was finished a few weeks ago. However, the process of now figuring out how to put all of those different proof of concepts together into building the app proper is a big task, and that is one that at the moment right now we are waiting on finishing the multi-wallet app before we really dive in together to figure that one out. So that one is temporarily on hold until 2.3 comes out. And something that's also come up in the web testing and sort of has been noticed due to the mobile app as well is connectivity between nodes on web and mobile, and how sometimes that's different than someone running a full desktop node. And in order to get around that, we've been also investigating different relays that could make that messaging much more reliable. And so that's sort of also in the background, a few little experiments here and there on building relays for better messaging, and not just of like chat messages, but generally messages going between nodes. So that's something that we'll also be focusing on after 2.3 to make web and mobile work better.
Yeah, a little bit of more detail there, Sam.
Go ahead.
Most likely the roadmap right now looks like we will release multi-wallet, and then our immediate focus will be on updating our current IPFS to the current, IPFS is ahead of us because we use a fork. And so we need to update our fork to match the current state of IPFS, which should, we believe, solve some of our connectivity problems and open the door to us using things like circuit relays, which don't work great with the version we have now. And that then becomes something that feeds into being able to do mobile and web better, as well as everyone, like all nodes, all desktop nodes would also benefit from that.
Right, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, and Brian was even mentioning it, I think today or yesterday, that IPNS also has had some recent major updates. So yeah, after 2.3, getting everything up to date on the IPFS, IPNS side, hopefully will already solve a a lot of the communication things. So that'll be good to see. One last note that I have over the last month is to mention some increased community involvement. Mike G noted that there was an effort called Hacktoberfest, which is put on by GitHub and DigitalOcean and a few other groups, I think, that basically attempts to incentivize people to contribute to open source projects by putting together an event and giving out a free t-shirt for people if they do a certain number of commits to public repositories. And we put out a blog post and tagged some issues for people to come in and give it a shot. Figure why not? And we actually saw a very positive response to that. We had 18 new contributors in the month of October who contributed 27 pull requests that were merged. And that's just the contributions to our repositories, but there was also substantial increased activity in the translation efforts in Transifex as well. And it's funny to say how motivating free swag is. Like it still surprises me, but Jen and I have had a substantial number of people reaching out saying, "Hey, here's my pull request, or here's my translation activity. When am I getting my shirt?" So I don't know how long lasting those contributors will be. I don't know how many of them will stick around past the end of the month, but it is great to see them at least for a little amount of effort, and hopefully a few will stick around. And maybe that points to a need for us to have some sort of ongoing standing offer to get more people in simply by offering swag, since it seems to work. So, all right, is there anything more on the OB1 side that I have not mentioned? Anyone from our team want to jump in? Okay, sounds like no. So is there anyone from the community who would like to tell us what you're working on or have any questions for us? So Rod has a question. Is there a general timeline or estimate for when 2.3 will be released? So I think the short answer is I don't have a specific timeline or estimate. I will say that there's two big moving pieces, moving targets here. One is the code side on both server and client, and the other is the infrastructure side. So one of the questions that we have is, are we going to wait until all of the infrastructure side is completed and all the coins that we could support are supported before we roll out the code, if the code is completed at that time, or not? So I don't think we have a clear answer to that yet. But the code is pretty far along. I mean, it's pretty much just in the testing phase on the server side, and it's almost to that on the client. And the infrastructure for some of the coins seems to be completed and working. So I don't know if anyone else on OB1 wants to hazard a guess, but it's not. It doesn't seem like it's like a end of the year type of thing. It should be done before then. Cornelove asked how many full-time employee developers OB1 has. I believe that's 12 at this point. That might be wrong. It might be 13. I'm starting to lose track. The number has gotten high enough that I can't keep it all in my head at once. But it's around 12.
Hey, Sam, this is Chris Troutner.
Hey, Chris.
Hopefully my audio's coming through okay. I just wanted to say congrats and good job on the contributors for Hacktoberfest. I am also heading up developer outreach. Well, I mean, we all
Chris, oh, it looks like he may have dropped off the call. At least on my end, I don't see him online. That's unfortunate. If he joins again, we'll let him know he cut out. Rod asks, have there been any updates for downloading offline messages quicker in the current client? I'll have to defer to Chris, Pacia, or Josh. Rod follows up that he's done some prototypes for putting together OpenBazaar features in the browser. The amount of time it takes for a full node to download offline messages is a big barrier on my side. So, Chris, go ahead.
I don't know if we have anything that speeds it up. We are looking at the circuit relaying, which hopefully will make it less reliant on the offline messages, because if people are genuinely online but they just have what's it called, bad connection, or they're behind a firewall or something like that, then we should still be able to communicate with them. As far as the actual messages go, I mean, the primary issue is it's doing a full IPNS crawl, and it's waiting for that to finish before doing anything else. So I don't know if that can really be sped up. If you wanted to speed it up, you could only just try querying like the data nodes and see, you know, specifically just query them and get the response, and rather than doing the crawl. You should still get everything that way, but it's that's the only other option, I think.
The only other thing that I'd add to that is the IPFS rebase does have some improvements in routing and lookup in the DHT that Chris was mentioning with regard to the IPNS. So we may see some improvements with how quickly data comes back in those scenarios, potentially after the date.
Thanks for the question, Rod. Feel free to ask follow-up questions in the chat, or, of course, in our Slack as well. Chris Troutner, you actually cut out on us fairly early when you were speaking, and we weren't able to hear what you're saying. So, yeah, you're saying your connection is not great now. So, feel free to post in the chat or whatnot if that works better. Any other comments or questions for us? I see Rod asks follow-up. I did some testing with doing full IPNS crawls on a shorter interval. I did not see any significant increase in resources used. You know, if there is a specific reason the crawl speed is at the current speed, it is.
So I could hazard a guess. Go for it.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into it. So some of it is unreachable nodes. I think that might be the biggest problem, is nodes in the DHT timing out, which if we get the relay stuff working well, that might improve that. But it does, when you do a full crawl, it's trying to crawl the whole space, and it waits till it gets like 16 responses or whatever it is. Back before, or actually, no, I think it goes until it crawls everyone within that particular neighborhood. But the issue is if you have peers that are unreachable and this sort of stuff, it like blocks the crawl and it slows it down. So I think better connectivity in the DHT will improve some of the speed there.
All right, and Rod mentions as well, you can follow him on Slack later if needed. Chris adds that he wanted to say congrats on Hacktoberfest results, and that he's also offering to work with Jen on future dev outreach. Appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, kudos to Jen and also Mike G on the Hacktoberfest stuff. That was definitely exciting to see. And yeah, I mean, however we can get more people involved and contributing, that's great. All right. Any other comments or questions before we wrap up this dev meeting? Sounds like no. As always, the best way to communicate with us is through the community Slack. So if anyone has any other thoughts or questions, please feel free to reach out to us there. Thank you everyone for coming and participating, and we will see you all next month. Have a great day.